So before I begin, I'd like to thank Treyarch and Activision for flying me out and paying for my hotel in order for me to capture this Black Ops 4 gameplay. Now in this video, I'll be telling you all the score streaks, the perks, the items, the wildcards, and the weapons in the game. In addition, I'll let you know the specialist characters, their weapon, and their equipment. Now unfortunately, we aren't allowed to show any menus from the capture event, so I'll have to verbally read you the descriptions. So one of the big selling points of this game is the absurd amount of customization, and I'm talking a ridiculous amount. It took me over 15 minutes just to make 3 classes. That's how many things you have to choose from. Now first, let's jump straight into the specialist characters. So there were a total of 8 you could pick from. Each character has a weapon or an ability and a unique item. Now you always get this weapon or ability, but the item you have to use a pick 10 point on and is found in a new category called equipment, which I'll cover later in the video. So first up is Battery, who has the War Machine as her weapon, and this is just the high explosive grenade launcher. As for her item, she has the Cluster Grenade. This says an explosive grenade that sticks to surfaces and releases sub-munitions upon detonation. Next is a guy named Torque. For his weapon, he has the Barricade. The description says, deploy reinforced cover for protection while securing objectives. It also has a built-in microwave field that slows and damages enemies, and it says the owner can deactivate this at will. For his item, he has the Razor Wire, which is a defensive wire that damages and slows enemies who attempt to cross it. Next up is a guy named Recon. As you might have guessed, his ability is the Vision Pulse, which pulses the map to reveal all enemies for yourself as well as your teammates. His item is the Sensor Dart, which reveals enemies in its proximity. Next up is Seraph, who has the Annihilator Pistol, and this is a high caliber revolver that fires devastating rounds with increased bullet penetration. Her item is the Tac Deploy, and this is a deployable beacon that allows your teammates to redeploy wherever you place it. Now Ruin makes a return with the Gravity Slam, or I guess it's called the Grav Slam, which is the same as his gravity spikes from Black Ops 3. His item though is the Grapple Gun, and this allows you to lock onto objects and zip around the map. Next up is the Medic, whose name is Crash. His ability is the Tac 5, and this allows you to heal, boost max health, and remove wounds from yourself and up to 4 targeted allies. And it also says it works through walls. From what I've heard about this, if you heal all 4 of your teammates, you get a health boost for yourself up to 300 health. Next up we have Firebreak, whose weapon is the Purifier, and this is the flamethrower like in Black Ops 3. His item is the Reactor Core. Now this damages enemies and reduces their max health for the duration of their life. Lastly, we have Ajax. His weapon is the Ballistic Shield, and this is more or less a riot shield with a built-in machine pistol that you can shoot. His item is the 9-bang grenade, just like in Call of Duty Ghosts. So this flashes and stuns your enemies, and it can be cooked to detonate multiple times. Next, let's cover all the weapons. For assault rifles, we only had 3 to pick from. First, the ICR-7, which says improved accuracy with low recoil. Next is the Rampart 17, and it said strong damage with slow fire rate. Lastly, there's the Vapor XKG, and it said superior mobility and reliable damage. For secondaries, there was only one pistol available called the Strife, and it said semi-auto standard issue sidearm. Now there was also a single shotgun, which is now a secondary weapon in Black Ops 4. And it's called the MOG 12. It said pump action buckshot for a reliable 2-shot kill. And this explains why I thought it was wank on the cob in the actual game. It takes 2 shots to kill. Lastly, there was a launcher as a secondary, and it's called the Hellion Salvo. It said a rocket launcher that features either lock-on or free fire. For SMGs, there were 3 of these as well. First is the MX9, which said fast firing with moderate recoil. Next was the Cordite, which simply said highest ammo capacity. And unfortunately, it doesn't show you the actual ammo capacity in the menu screen like it did for World War II. And last, the SOG 9mm, which said fastest handling and movement. Next up is a new category of weapons called the Tactical Rifles, of which there were 2. First, the Auger DMR, and this is a semi-auto with high damage. The other is called the Swordfish, and it said it's a 4-round burst for long-range precision. Now there were also 2 sniper rifles available. First was the Paladin HB50, which says high damage bolt action. The other was called the Kashka, which said fast handling bolt action. Now unfortunately, there was only one LMG, and it was called the Titan, which said reliable firepower with the largest ammo pool. So in total, there were 14 weapons available for us to choose from in this build of the game. Now David Vonderhaar did say that there wouldn't be many weapons in this game, so I guess I wouldn't anticipate many more being added. For sure though, I'd expect at least one more LMG and pistol, but most other categories seem pretty filled out. Next, let's talk about the perks. So as per most Call of Duty games, there's 3 categories of perks, with each category having 4 perks within them. First up is the perk 1 category. There's Engineer, which says show enemy equipment and score streaks and lock onto vehicles faster. Then there's Flak Jacket, which takes less fire damage, explosive damage, and radiation damage. Next is something called Resistance, and it says resistant to 9-bang, concussion, razor wire, and counter UAV. And lastly, there's Cold-Blooded, which gives you resistance to Scorestreak targeting systems. So of these, I'd have to say that Resistance or Flak Jacket appear to be the best. Next up is the perk 2 category. In this one we have Scavenger, which is obviously to replenish ammo from fallen players, Dexterity, which allows you to mantle, climb, slide, and swap weapons faster, in addition to increased weapon accuracy when jumping or mantling. Then we have Gung Ho, which allows you to fire your weapon and use equipment while sprinting. You can also recover from sprint faster and move at full speed when reloading. And last is Lightweight, which allows you to move faster and take no damage when falling. So Lightweight will probably be a fan favorite here, but this category is stacked. Everyone loves Scavenger, and then Gung Ho and Dexterity seem really useful as well. Luckily, there's a wild card that I'll talk about in a second that can remedy the abundance of great perks here. Now next is the perk 3 category. In this category we have something called Reveal, which says increase Fog of War reveal radius for self and teammates. Next up is Dead Silence. This says move quietly and resist detection from acoustic sensor. Then we have something called Team Link, and this says see friendly teammates through walls. I'm not exactly sure how useful this could be though. Lastly, Ghost makes a return, and it says undetectable by enemy UAVs while moving, planting, or defusing bombs or controlling streaks. It also says reduced reveal time on enemy sensor darts and vision pulse. So obviously, Ghost and Dead Silence will reign supreme here, and I'd say footsteps were pretty loud from what I could tell. Now next up are the wild cards. You can pick up to 3 of these, and there's a whopping total of 14 to select from. For the weapons, there's Overkill, which replaces your secondary with another primary, and then there's Primary Gunfighter 1, 2, and 3, which all add an additional attachment to your primary weapon. Then there's Secondary Gunfighter 1, 2, and 3, which do the same thing except for your secondary weapon. And then there's Underkill, which replaces your primary weapon for another secondary. Now for the perk wildcards, there's 6. There's 3 that are called Gluttony and 3 that are called Greed. So for example, there's perk 1 Gluttony, and this lets you take 3 perks from category 1. So instead of picking 1 perk from all 3 categories, you can now only take 3 from whichever category it says. So likewise, there's perk 2 Gluttony and perk 3 Gluttony. For the Greed wildcards, it lets you take 2 perks from the same category, but you can still select other perks as well. So for perk 1 Greed, you can take 2 perks from the first category, but you can still take a perk from 2 and from perk 3. A little confusing, but you'll get the hang of it. Now next, we have a new category called Gear. In this category, there's 5 items. First up is something called the Equipment Charge, and it says equipment and specialist weapons recharge faster. Next is the acoustic sensor, which says enemy movements are easier to hear and trigger minimap indications. Then we have something called the ComSec device, and it says score streaks are earned at a discounted cost. And then there's the Stim Shot, which says heal instantly and more often while maintaining control of your weapon. And lastly is Body Armor, and this is increased protection from initial bullet damage. So all of these actually sound pretty awesome, but you can only select one of these. I think you can also not select one to gain an extra pick 10 point, but I never tried that. The most commonly used item is probably going to be the Stim Shot. Now the next category is called Equipment. Now this is somewhat of a merged category. You'll find all the lethal and tactical items here, but in addition, there's something called a Special Issue item. And this is that unique piece of equipment assigned to each specialist. I already covered all of these when I talked about the specialists. So besides these specialist items, there's also the following. First, the Trophy System. This can destroy enemy lethal items, tacticals, and explosives within 10 meters. It also says high velocity missiles have a chance to penetrate the system. Then there's the Molotov, which explodes on impact and spreads flames over a small area. There's also the normal frag grenade, the concussion grenade, and lastly, the combat axe. So all those things are in the same category. Now this is why I don't like it. Why would anyone choose, say, a frag grenade or a concussion grenade over the specialist unique item? All the specialist items are way stronger. The only drawback is all these items are on a timer. So for example, I assume that frag grenades can come back pretty quickly, so you could essentially have an unlimited supply. The specialist items take longer to recharge, and so you'd only get to use them a few times during a match. However, some of these are still quick, such as Ruin's grapple hook. That thing can be used 20 plus times a match. So next up are Scorestreaks. But first, remember that one of the gear items is called the QuantumSchema, and this reduces Scorestreak cost. So I'll be giving 2 cost values for each streak. Now there were only 8 streaks available in this build of the game. First is the standard UAV, which is 500 normally or reduced to 350 with QuantumSchema. Next is the counter UAV, which is 600 or reduced to 450. The next one is the Hellstorm missile, which is 700 or reduced to 600. Then there's the normal sentry gun, which is 800 or 650. Next was the attack chopper for 900 or a discounted price of 750. Then there was something called the Mantis, which is a heavily armored 4-legged combat robot, and it says it can be remote controlled as well. It costs 1,000 points or 825. Next is something called the Strike Team, and this has 2 elite armored soldiers dropping from a chopper to clear a position. You can also command them to move by holding the square button. This one costs 1,100 points or 900. And lastly, we had the gunship for 1,500 or 1,200. Now the last thing I want to talk about are the attachments. Now Black Ops 4 makes another interesting choice with these, as each weapon has their own set of attachments. For example, the first assault rifle has 6 attachments to choose from, and the third one has 7, and some perks have the Roman numeral 2 after them. So for example, the first assault rifle has grip and grip 2. So you can equip grip, which reduces recoil, and also equip grip 2, which reduces recoil the longer you fire. It also looks like the suppressor can't be equipped on some assault rifles. Again, for example, that first assault rifle can't equip this, but the third one can. Now most of the attachments in the game you'll be familiar with, but there are some new ones. The Paladin sniper rifle has something called a stabilizer and an ADS reloader. The first stabilizer reduces weapon sway when aiming, and the stabilizer 2 lets you hold your breath longer. Now the ADS reloader says you can reload faster and you can reload while aiming. The Paladin sniper also has high caliber 1 and high caliber 2. So high caliber 1 increases damage to the lower torso, and high caliber 2 increases damage to the legs. Now some of the SMGs have an attachment called Advanced Mags, and this not only lets you reload faster, but it also gives you more ammo, which I think is extremely powerful. The LMG also has Extended Mags 2, which gives you even more ammo. Now if independent attachments weren't crazy enough, some of the weapon categories have a super-de-duper-de attachment that's somewhat hidden, and it's called the Operator mod. In order to even use these, you have to use a Gunfighter wildcard, and this is the one that grants you an additional attachment. So for example, the Shotgun's Operator mod is called the Dragon's Breath, which are the incendiary rounds. So in order to equip this, you have to first use the secondary Gunfighter wildcard, and then it becomes selectable. The Operator mod on the LMG class is the Suppressive Barrel, and this blurs the enemy's screen if the bullets whiz by their face. The Operator mod on the pistol is the Tack Knife, and the one on the assault rifle is the Bayonet. Now oddly enough, the SMG and the sniper rifle weapon classes didn't have these operator mods in this build of the game. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to check the tactical rifles either, so I'm not sure if they did or not. It's strange that most of the weapon classes did have this, and yet some don't. And that, as they say, is that. Now I know this was a long video, but I'm sure a lot of you are anxious to find this information out. So hopefully I covered everything in an easy to follow manner. Now I'll be doing a Black Ops 4 impressions video when I get back from California, so stay tuned.